Today I'm going to show you how to use a variable ND filter together with your off-camera flash to take better pictures. Okay, so this is a continuation of my off-camera flash tutorials, and today I'm going to be adding an ND filter to it. And all you really need is a camera that can shoot in manual mode and a flash that has an optical trigger with manual power control. And that's it, really. All of this gear here is basically set up so I can, do this tutorial. But so just try to imagine that I'm hand holding this camera here like this, and then hand holding the flash this way and taking a picture. So I'm going to stand over here behind me and take a picture of myself in a portrait mode because just for this scene. Because the variable ND filter, if you don't know what it is basically it's like sunglasses for your camera, and by rotating this filter it gets darker and gets lighter, as I keep going around and around. And this filter, basically this one here, roughly can reduce light from 2 stops up to about 8 or 9 stops. And there's a lot of tutorials out there for using variable ND filters or the static ND filters that have a fixed stop reduction in light. And it's typically for those like waterfall type pictures, or making the water or a stream look smooth as glass by taking very, very long exposures like 30 seconds. And what I don't see a lot of is how to use variable ND filters to take better pictures outside of a subject, say in a portrait situation, but really any subject that's kind of in a shaded area, but then the background is very, very bright. And if you try to take a picture using a flash or just straight out of the camera, it's not going to come out very well. So let's go ahead and take a picture. But let me just talk about one more thing. A lot of tutorials you see where people are in this kind of lighting situation where it's very bright in the background but the subject's in a shaded area, is they're using high-speed sync flashes. And what that does basically is it lets you sync the flash beyond the 1/250th of a second, but sync it all the way up to 8,000th of a second shutter speed. And those flashes are very expensive. I mean, again, we're talking $300, $400, $500 for a high-speed sync flash, and then you'll need a high-speed sync compatible camera. Now, the Olympus Pen F in this case is high-speed sync compatible, as well as probably some other Olympus cameras. But for most of us, we're not doing work professionally on the Pen F, or a lot of us in cameras in general. We just want to take better pictures and not spend a lot of money. So, like I said, I have just a very simple flash setup here. I like the Nikon SB-26 because it has a very reliable optical trigger, and I can control the power manually, but it's also a very powerful flash that I can use in an outdoor scene. And then this ND filter is only about $30, and you can find these all day long on eBay, for $25, $30. And, I wouldn't get the cheapest one you can get because there is some problems with it adding a little bit of a color cast, which can be fixed in post, but just spend a little bit more, like $30, maybe $40, $50 even, for a decent quality ND filter. But in any case, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to take a picture using the camera basically in aperture priority and let it control the shutter speed for the exposure and see what we get. So power on the camera, and I have already pre-focused, but let's put the camera, we are in aperture priority. Let me go ahead and show you the settings I have, and I'm going to turn off this flash here. So basically we're auto white balance. I fixed the ISO at 200, and we're in large fine plus raw. So basically it's fully automatic. It's going to calculate the exposure and adjust the shutter speed accordingly. So let's go ahead and take a picture and see what the camera does without any help from any off-camera flash or much less the ND filter. Okay. So as you can see, the background's exposed pretty well, but then me, the subject, is way too dark. And I've tried using this on-camera flash to supplement or fill in, but that didn't work either. Let's go ahead and show you what you can do with an ND filter. So I'm just going to screw it on, and this is bigger than it actually is because I have a couple of step rings to make it fit this tiny kit lens. I'm gonna screw that on, and then what I'm gonna do at this point is I'm gonna leave the settings the same, but I'm gonna try and point the camera and have as much of the sky into the frame as possible. Okay, and let's see, that's about 1/800th of a second, which is probably about as much as I need to, or as much sky as I can get into the picture. And I'm going to adjust the ND filter until I get this down to 1/250th of a second, which is within the range of the high-speed sync, or I'm sorry, the flash sync for the off-camera flash and the on-camera flash. Okay, and now you see when I brought it back down to the regular scene, we're down to 80th of a second. Remember, it was originally 800th of a second. So the ND filter's reducing the light coming into the camera easily by 4 stops just off the top of my head. Now that that's set, the ND filter, I'm going to put the camera into manual mode. Okay, and I'm going to make sure that the flash sync speed, or the shutter speed, is set to 1/250th of a second. And now I'm going to turn on the on-camera flash. And right now it's set to full power. And I'm going to leave it at full power just to make sure that it triggers the off-camera flash. Mainly because I'm outside, and it's not going to affect the exposure at all because it is pointed off to the side. But also because this rig is blocking the flash. Normally I wouldn't have to use that at full power. So you save a little battery power, right? But let me show you a couple other settings. I think large, fine, plus, raw. So everything else is pretty normal. The only thing I'm going to change actually is I'm going to change the white balance from auto to flash. So white balance flash. And that's pretty close to daylight anyway. But the reason I'm doing that is because the flash is going to be illuminating the subject, myself in this case. So I want the white balance to be on me to be correct. And that's really all we need to do. So let's go ahead and take another picture like this. And I'm sorry, let me check the off-camera flash, make sure it's turned on. And we are turned on. For the Nikon, I set the zoom on the zoom head to 24 millimeters so that it spreads the beam as wide as possible, so that I get, as much of me illuminated as possible. And then also, I'm going to set the flash to half power. Mainly because I'm only about 5 feet away from the flash. I think if I shot it at full power, it would just be too strong anyway. And you get a feel for these things as you start to take pictures using off-camera flash. But I think that's it. So I have this at half power. I have this at 1/250th of a second in manual. And I've already adjusted the ND filter to what it needs to be to expose the sky properly. So all I have to worry about now is adjusting the flash power so that it exposes me, the subject, properly. Okay, let's take a look, and hopefully it's still in focus. But yeah, that looks pretty awesome. I think I'm pretty well exposed. The sky is definitely well exposed. The only thing I would change in this picture, and I could probably do it in post because there's a little bit of headroom here, but the surrounding ambient light is still a little bit dark. And what I can do is, I know for the sky is well exposed, and even in a JPEG you have about 1 stop worth of wiggle room to adjust it in post. So I'm going to lower the exposure by adjusting the shutter speed down to 1/25th or 1 stop. And I'm not going to do more than that because I will blow out the highlights if I adjust the shutter speed too slow. Now the other thing I should note is that the shutter speed does not affect the flash at all. It's basically the flash is illuminating me, and it's kind of its own separate camera, in other words. in terms of lighting. So let's take a picture here and just demonstrate that, okay? Okay, let's see. Oh, that helped a little bit. I think I still have a little more wiggle room in the sky. I can experiment. Let's just do one more real quick. Let's try 1/80th of a second. Let's try one more stop, 1/60th, and see how that looks. Okay, and that looks really good to me, I think. You know, there's a little bit of light on my face from peeking through, but that's okay. Basically, I got the sky exposed properly, I got the background exposed properly, and I'm exposed properly. And you notice the exposure on me didn't change at all by changing the shutter speed. And that's the beauty of off-camera flash, is it's independent of the shutter speed on the camera, up to 1/250th of a second. Now aperture will affect the light, the overall scene, and ISO will affect the overall scene. So that's why I have the aperture fixed and the ISO fixed. But shutter speed I can play with to adjust the exposure of the rest of the ambient light. Now one other trick I'm going to show you is on the zoom head on this, I can narrow the beam down up to 85 millimeters, and I think that kind of gives a neat effect as well. So let's do that and show you what that looks like. So I'm going to move the zoom head up to 85 millimeters, and the other thing I need to do actually is reduce the flash power, because now the beam is focusing more, almost twice as close, or 3 times as close now at 85 millimeters. So I'm going to guess, I'm at a half power now, I'm going to guess, say, maybe a quarter power to 1/8 power. You know, that would be 2 stops less. That might be a bit too much. Let's try just one more stop down, maybe a quarter power. Actually, I'm feeling 1/8 power. Let's try 2 stops. And again, like I said, you kind of get a feel for this when you start taking pictures. And I don't need to do anything else on the camera. All I did was reduce the power and narrow the beam. And let me make sure that it's facing me directly. I can adjust this slightly. Just a tad. Okay, let's take a picture there. And let's see how that looks. Okay, I like that. I got a little bit of a vignette action going on when I narrowed the beam. So compare that to the previous picture where everything's kind of illuminated. And then the next picture, it looks darker too because the clouds have kind of come over and darkened the ambient light in the scene. But you can see, like down here where my arms are not as illuminated as they were in the previous picture. Okay. And that's pretty much it for using the variable ND filter, and it gives you basically the same effect as high-speed sync flash without spending all that money on high-speed sync flash, maybe radio triggers, maybe using multiple flashes. It's really actually very simple. You don't have to get too complicated learning how to use radio control and controlling high-speed sync flash. And high-speed sync flash also uses a ton of power. It just drains the heck out of the flash's batteries, and so that's kind of another issue with high-speed sync flash. Using an ND filter also has the other added benefit of letting you maintain that shallow depth of field. because you can shoot at lower apertures. Like if this lens went down to f1.8, I could have been shooting at f1.8 at 1/250th of a second. All I would have had to do is adjust the ND filter to bring the shutter speed down to 1/250th of a second. So maybe I'll do that. Let me cut here. I'll go get my let's see, I think I have my 25mm in my bag. Let me go check that out. I'll be right back. Okay, so it turns out I had a 35mm CCTV lens in there, which, you know, obviously is my favorite lens. And I'm going to set this lens at f2 just so we get a shallow depth of field, which is another benefit of using the ND filter with off-camera flash. And the sun's kind of come out a little bit, and it's taken me about 10 minutes to kind of get everything set up again for some reason, but so the lights changed quite a bit. But let's give this a shot, okay, using the same principles. So we're going to put the camera into aperture priority, and we're going to tilt the camera up so that we get more sky into the picture, and then just adjust the ND filter until we get to 1/250th of a second, which is right about there. Perfect. Okay, now I just put the camera into manual, and the settings haven't changed. I'm still in 1/250th of a second. My white balance is set to flash, and I have the timer, and the ISO is fixed to 200. So everything looks good there. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to try and focus. Let me turn on the focus peaking. I'm going to try and stand right next to that leaf. Okay. Alright, let me check the flash power. It's right now it's at 85mm half power. My gut feeling is that may be a little too strong because we have reduced the aperture on the lens to f2 by like 2 stops. So I'm just going to decrease the flash power one more stop. Right now it's at a half. I'm going to set it to a quarter. And if I'm still off, I can always just reduce it again or raise it for that matter. But let's try a shot right here and see how that looks. And I was focusing on this leaf here, so I just want to make sure my eye is in that plane of focus. What did I do? I forgot to turn the flash on. But we can see what the camera does with no flash, right? The sky looks perfectly exposed. The background doesn't look too bad. So that was a lucky accident, right? For tutorial purposes. Alright, let's try again. I should have checked focus while I was there, but in any case, I don't like how this light's hitting me in the eye, but let's see what that looks like. And yeah, that looks really good. I'm out of focus, but the exposure looks pretty good. And let's just check the depth of field back here. Of course, the leaf is perfectly in focus. Maybe I didn't stand next to the leaf properly. But based on this, I can probably lower the shutter speed maybe a stop. Let's give that a shot. So one stop would be half at 1/125th. And let's take a picture there. And I'm going to stand right here. And hopefully that is in focus now. That's pretty rough. But essentially, if you just look at the exposure, everything is right. And that's the main lesson of this tutorial. So let's just go ahead and end it here instead of me trying to get the focus right. Because if I was behind the camera, focus would be no problem, right? Okay, so thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video and learned some new tricks using the ND filter to get better pictures. Thanks again for watching.